The banquet hall of the Crimson Moon Pack glowed with candlelight. Long tables were covered in white cloth, and silver plates caught the light from 100 small flames. Every wolf of importance from the Northern Territories had come for the Alpha King's yearly gathering. It was a night for alliances, for tribute, and for reminders of who truly ruled the land. Elena did not want to be there. She was an Omega from the Ashwood Pack, one of the lowest ranks in wolf society. Omegas served. They carried trays, cleaned halls, and stayed quiet in rooms full of people who barely noticed them. Elena had learned long ago that the safest place for someone like her was in the shadows, not near the light. But her beta, a sharp-tempered woman named Greta, had given her an order that morning. Elena was to carry a tray of wine to the high table where the Alpha King himself would be sitting. Omegas did not refuse orders, so Elena had pulled her long sleeves down to cover her arms, straightened her spine despite the ache in her ribs, and walked into the hall with her eyes fixed on the floor. She kept her shoulders angled slightly to the left, the way she always did now, so that no one would notice how she favored her right side. It had become a habit, this careful way of moving, of hiding pain so well that even she sometimes forgot it was there. The tray was heavy. 6 goblets of deep red wine balanced on polished silver. Elena's arms trembled slightly under the weight, but she kept walking, counting her steps the way she always did to calm her racing heart. 10 steps to the dais, 9, 8. She was 3 steps away from the high table when the room began to tilt. At first she thought it was the candlelight, flickering strangely at the edges of her vision. Then the sound of the hall grew distant, as if she were hearing it through water. Her knees buckled before she understood what was happening. The tray slipped from her hands. Glass shattered against the marble floor, wine spreading like a dark red stain across the white stone. Elena fell after it, her knees striking the ground hard, and then everything went black. King Damian Cross was on his feet before she hit the floor. He did not call for a guard. He did not wait for someone else to act. The Alpha King of the Northern Territories, a man whose name alone made lesser wolves lower their eyes, crossed the entire hall in a few long strides, knocking aside a startled noble's chair without noticing or caring. He knelt beside the fallen girl before anyone else in the room had even fully understood what had happened. Damian had ruled for 11 years. He had faced rival packs, settled bloody disputes, and carried the weight of thousands of lives on his shoulders. He was not a man who knelt easily, but something about the way this stranger had crumpled to the floor, small and silent, pulled him down without thought. He lifted her carefully, one arm sliding beneath her knees, the other supporting her back. She weighed almost nothing, which struck him as strange for someone who worked as hard as Omegas were known to work. As he adjusted his grip, her sleeve slipped up her arm. What he saw made his breath catch. Bruises ran up her forearm like rungs on a ladder. Some were old, faded to a sickly yellow-green, clearly weeks healed. Others were fresh, dark purple and still swollen, only days old. As he shifted her weight, her collar slipped too, revealing another mark on her shoulder, shaped unmistakably like a hand. Damian went very still. The hall around him had fallen silent. Nobles who had been laughing moments before now stood frozen, wine glasses halfway to their lips, watching their king kneel on the floor with an unconscious Omega in his arms. No one dared to speak. He did not look up at them. His attention was entirely on the girl, on the way her body curled inward, even while unconscious, knees drawn close to her chest, arms tucked protectively. It was the posture of someone who had learned, through long and painful practice, how to make herself as small as possible. "Get my healer," Damian said. His voice was quiet, but every wolf in the room understood that quiet from their king was far more dangerous than shouting. Now, a young guard sprinted from the hall. Damian rose to his feet, the unconscious girl held gently against his chest, and walked toward his private chambers without another word. Whispers followed him like smoke, but he ignored them completely. His wolf paced restlessly just beneath his skin, agitated in a way he had not felt in years. He laid her carefully on his own bed, arranging a pillow beneath her head. When the healer arrived minutes later, an older woman named Mireille, who had served the pack for decades, Damian stepped back only far enough to let her work, but he did not leave the room. Cracked ribs, Mireille murmured, her hands moving gently along Elena's side. Old ones. Not from tonight. And these bruises, Your Majesty, these did not come from a fall. I know, Damien said. His jaw was tight enough to ache. Mireille glanced up at him, understanding passing between them without need for further words. She continued her examination in silence, applying salve to the worst of the marks, wrapping Elena's ribs with careful hands. When she finished, she looked at the king with something close to sorrow in her eyes. She will wake soon, exhaustion, mostly, and not enough food in her stomach. Her body simply could not carry her any further tonight. Thank you, Damien said. Send for warm broth, and find out everything you can about which pack she belongs to. Mireille nodded and left quietly, closing the door behind her. Damien pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down, elbows on his knees, watching the girl breathe. In sleep, her face had lost the careful blankness he suspected she wore during waking hours. She looked young, tired, fragile in a way that did not match the strength it must have taken to survive whatever had left those marks on her body. He thought of his own childhood, of a father who had ruled with fear instead of respect, who believed that pain taught obedience. Damien had sworn, the day he took the throne, that no wolf under his protection would ever be made to suffer the way he once had. And yet here was proof that somewhere, under his own authority, someone had failed that promise completely. Hours passed. The candles burned low. Damien did not leave the room. When Elena finally stirred, her eyes fluttering open, disorientation clouded her face for several long seconds. She did not recognize the room, the soft bed, the unfamiliar comfort of it all. Panic rose in her chest before her mind caught up with her surroundings. Then she saw him. The Alpha King sat only a few feet away, watching her with an intensity that made her want to shrink into the mattress and disappear. You're safe, Damien said quickly, before she could speak, before the fear in her eyes could fully take hold. No one will hurt you here, not while I am breathing. Elena's mouth went dry. She tried to sit up, wincing as her ribs protested the movement. Your Majesty, I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened. I need to get back to my duties. My beta will be furious that Your beta, Damien said, his voice low and controlled, is going to answer for every single mark on your body. The words hit Elena like cold water. Her breath caught in her throat. It's nothing, truly. I fell. I'm clumsy. I always have been. Don't, Damien said, softer this time, though the steel beneath his tone did not waver. I have led wolves for 11 years. I know the difference between a bruise from falling and a bruise from a grip that was meant to hurt. I know old wounds from new ones. You do not have to protect whoever did this to you, not from me. Elena said nothing. Her silence, and the way her eyes dropped to her hands, told him everything he needed to know. Something inside Damien hardened into resolve. He had built his entire reign on the belief that a pack's true strength was measured by how it treated its weakest members, not its strongest ones. And now, sitting before him, was living proof that somewhere within his territory, someone had broken that principle in the cruelest way possible. Here is what will happen now, he said, his tone gentle but leaving absolutely no room for argument. You will remain in this pack house until you are fully healed. You will eat proper meals. You will rest. And whoever is responsible for what happened to you will be found and will answer to me directly. Why? Elena whispered, her voice trembling. You don't even know me. I'm nobody. Just an Omega who works in the kitchens. Damien looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable moving behind his eyes. Because I watched you fall, he said simply. And something in me refused to let you hit the ground without someone catching you. That is reason enough for tonight. We will figure out the rest together. Tears welled in Elena's eyes before she could stop them. It had been so long, she realized, since anyone had spoken to her with such gentleness. So long since anyone had looked at her and seen a person rather than a task to be completed, or an obstacle in someone else's way. Over the following days, Damien kept his word. He assigned 2 guards to watch over Elena discreetly while she recovered, ensuring she was never alone and never afraid. He personally spoke with Mireille each morning about her healing progress, and quietly, carefully, He began investigating exactly what had been happening within the Ashwood pack. What he uncovered made his blood run cold. Greta, the beta who had sent Elena to carry that tray, had a long history of cruelty toward the Omegas under her authority. Complaints had been filed before, official reports that somehow always disappeared before reaching higher leadership. Elena was not the first to suffer. She was simply the first whose suffering had been seen by someone with the power to stop it. Damien summoned Greta to Crimson Moon territory, under the guise of a routine meeting. When she arrived, confident and unaware of what awaited her, he laid out everything he had learned in careful, measured words. He did not shout. He did not need to. His quiet fury filled the room more completely than any raised voice could have. Greta was stripped of her rank that day. She was banished from the Northern Territories entirely, forbidden from holding any position of authority over another wolf for the rest of her life. It was not the harshest punishment Damien could have handed down, but it was just, and it was final. When Elena learned what had happened, she sat in stunned silence for a long time. For years, she had believed that no one would ever notice her pain, let alone act on it. The idea that someone with as much power as the Alpha King would use that power to protect someone as small and unimportant as herself felt almost impossible to accept. She found him later that evening, standing alone on the balcony outside the great hall, looking out over the moonlit grounds of his territory. "Thank you," she said quietly, coming to stand beside him, "for everything. I don't know how I could ever repay you." Damien glanced at her, and for the first time since she had met him, something like a small smile touched his face. "You don't owe me anything, Elena. What happened to you should never have happened at all. I only did what any decent leader should have done, long before you ever fainted in my hall." "Not everyone would have done what you did," Elena said softly. "Most people look away." "Then most people are wrong," Damien replied, his voice firm. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the moon rise higher over the packlands. Elena felt something she had not felt in a very long time, something she almost did not recognize at first. It took her a moment to name it. It was safety. Real, lasting safety, not the fragile kind she had learned to create for herself through silence and careful movement, but the kind that came from knowing someone stood ready to protect her. In the weeks that followed, Elena remained within Crimson Moon territory. Damien offered her a place among his own pack staff, a position where her work would be respected and her well-being genuinely cared for. She accepted, slowly rebuilding a life that felt entirely her own for the first time. The bruises on her arms faded with time, replaced eventually by nothing but smooth, healed skin. But what remained long after the marks disappeared was the memory of a king who had knelt on a marble floor for a stranger, who had looked at her pain and refused to look away, and who had sworn, in that very first moment, to find whoever had hurt her. He had kept that promise completely. And in doing so, he had given Elena something far more valuable than justice alone. He had given her back her sense of worth, her belief that she mattered, and the quiet, steady hope that perhaps the world held more kindness than she had ever dared to imagine. From that night forward, whenever Elena walked through the halls of Crimson Moon territory, she no longer kept her eyes on the floor. She walked with her shoulders straight, her head held high, no longer hiding, no longer afraid. She had found, in the most unexpected way, a place where she truly belonged.